The past two episodes we've been building our town of Fugusaki. Today I'm going to go in a different direction. We'll be building this mountain town here, and we'll be connecting the train station from here all the way back over to here. Welcome back to Fugusaki Days. Alright y'all, so last episode we bought this land right here and I put in some infrastructure to get an idea what I want to do with the area. I'm going to delete it because I think I have something that'll fit better. Honestly, the whole reason I'm even building a new town over here is so that I have an excuse to add trains into our city. But the problem with this part of the map is it's very hilly. I had to figure out where I wanted to put the station. And I think I landed on that part that I just flattened out. Just bear with me for a moment. One of the problems I had is I wanted to find a small station that was preferably on the ground, but was also small enough to fit comfortably on this flat part right here. I didn't want it to go much further than this. And while this is good, it's just too bulky. So I landed on this small overground station that I think will fit perfectly for a small mountain town vibe. I'll flatten some of the land here to make sure that the trains have a pretty low grade descent from the station. But after that, I try to figure out if I can slope it up through the hill or if I'm going to need to take it underground. It might be hard to read, but I'm getting like 8%, 9% inclines over here. So going over the hill is not going to work. So we switch down to make a tunnel entrance, and then I'll just kind of leave it at the border of our land at the moment so that I know where to connect it going forward. Okay, so the plan is in the future to take it down through here so it can branch out onto this other coast. Probably have the tunnel come out this way, and then it could be on the ground levels going through this flatter area down that way, or then maybe switch back over to this way. There's a few different connections we can make once we get over this direction. After I get the end track figured out, I move over here and add a pedestrian street along the train station. The unfortunate thing is it's not really a pedestrian street because cars can drive on it whenever they want. But my hope is smart road planning and adding some parking lots will help fix that problem. Another challenge with this area is the train station is in the middle of this valley, so it kind of divides the town in two. So my hope is by adding at least one bridge, I should be able to help, well, literally bridge the gap between the two parts of town. And of course the beauty of this game is if you don't like the bridge, you can just move it and you can just fix it up to how you want it. With the bridge in a decent spot, I decided to extend the roads here and get a better feel for the layout of this part of town. It's going to be kind of on the back side of the station, mostly residential, and it's such a hilly area over here. I'm gonna have to figure out how to make best use of the land. While I'm laying out the roads, I also want to consider where future roads are gonna go. I think right around here, a tunnel could probably connect the two sides of the mountain up, but I'll leave that for a future episode. Because right now I need to focus on getting my road layout done for the town so I can start placing some buildings and growing our population and getting more money. At the start of the town, I'm going to put two forking roads, one going to the left of the town, one going to the right. And then we'll have sort of a ring road effect going throughout the town. With the forking roads built, I'll draw out a few more roads, mainly alleyways, for the narrow aesthetic. And then I'll smooth out the terrain on all the parts that I've done, and I'll start plopping buildings. This town will mainly consist of low density housing, but there will be some mixed housing and some medium density apartments dotted around as well. Something I've started experimenting with is intentional dead ends. These become particularly prevalent when you're in a hilly area and there's not really a place for the road to go to, so it just stops. But this also makes for a quieter neighborhood. I'll add some mixed use on the pedestrian street next to the train station with some more commercial. Squeeze in a few houses before adding in a surface here just to make it look a little bit more cohesive. On the outskirts of the downtown area, I'll add in some larger lots here. My hope is these larger lots will help transition into the more rural side of town. But with more buildings down, it's time to actually figure out where this train's going to connect up to. I think I'm going to keep it as level as possible, and once we get up to this hill, I'm going to make it tunnel down, and then it can reappear at a more level space instead of having to fight these hills. I would assume this is a private railway, not really owned by any of the national companies, but just a private railway that has a vested interest in seeing the connection of Fugusaki in our mountain town. One thing I will point out is we don't have enough money for any station here, so I'm gonna get another loan so I can drop down this elevated train station here. I think it's large enough that we can comfortably have multiple connections in and out of this town, even having one going across the water eventually when we start building out a town over there. You know, I really struggled trying to figure out how to get this train line through the city. Like, look at this. I have this train viaduct essentially coming through here, but the incline is just too steep. So throughout the video, you might see it change. I'll come back through and show the final layout for the train station. I think it fits much better. I like it way more. It's not some gigantic infrastructure for a pretty small town at the time being. But for now, we'll at least have a connection from this town to the other one. The bridge here will stay by the station to some capacity. And I'm thinking it'll probably be some low density, maybe commercial behind it up against the mountain here. But we'll just have to see when the time comes. For now, let's get an actual connection going. And with that, we have a connection from our mountain town to our coastal city. Back at our mountain town, I want to add a small livestock farm here using the modular zone. I don't really have, well, first of all, there's not enough space for me to put a vanilla farm here. So I think I'll just lay out a little space here for some cattle or some chickens or pigs. I'm not really sure what kind of livestock they have over there, but I think just a small farm here. I'll put down a static ploppable, give it some gravel driveway, and we'll call it good for now. Back at the bridge behind the train station, I'm figuring out how to get the road layout along the hillside here. The station's double-sided, so I want to get an alleyway on the backside here as well to make sure everybody here has a access point to the station on this side without having to cross the bridge. And so I'll just build this out and make sure it's connected to the outer loop, and then I'll just build out a little bit of a road layout here. With the mountainside roads laid out, I'll bring this road here sort of parallel to where our planned rail will go, except it'll be cutting through the mountains above it. Taking a step back, here's the road layout. The grids are a little big, but given the terrain differences from top to bottom, I feel like it's kind of necessary. And with the roads laid out, I can start adding houses along the hillside. I also add in a bit of commercial because I feel like I'm kind of lacking in commercial over in town. The most we have is along the train station, but that's like at the center of town. After a few minutes, I have the whole hillside built up. Switching gears, we're back in Fugusaki. You can see we are in the negative right now. We have a lot of demand for stuff, and this main street has some low density businesses and housing that I honestly just think shouldn't be there anymore. And I think the city would probably agree. And I feel like these businesses and these homeowners would probably be getting some pretty large offers on their lots. So that's exactly what happens. They get bought up by companies looking to put in some higher density businesses and housing. With the lot demolished, the new businesses can finally move in and start building up their higher density buildings. A lot of mixed use and office buildings on the main street here, and I'll try to squeeze in an apartment or two on the backside next to the high school. This lot honestly turns into somewhat of an experiment for me to see how I can do higher density lots. I'm using a lot of the custom assets, like this one in particular. I love it. I love all the ads and branding on the top of it. It just stands out among the city. And I think as the city continues to grow, we'll start seeing more of these higher density blocks starting to pop up where all that residential is along the coastline. And because of the roads I'm using don't really have official sidewalks, the citizens walk on the shoulders. And because of that, I'm trying to make sure the buildings are backed away from the street enough to where I can go in with a surface and make it look like they have a bigger sidewalk than they might really actually have. On the back right corner of the block, I'll add in one of these apartment complexes with parking underneath. And here's the block. It stands out significantly taller than the surrounding area, which is kind of interesting, but I'm thinking we'll see some more density in the future here. Also note, it's not really detailed right now. I don't really have money for trees or anything like that. But here's an idea of how it turns out. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you guys think. Okay, so I added some more higher density apartments in the back block there, and I think this part of Main Street, or I guess Rosemead Lane, will get a similar treatment, especially being across the street from a train station. This is some high value property right here, so we'll make sure it gets the kind of treatment it deserves. While building up this street, I've noticed I do not have any surfaces on these pedestrian streets, and I want everything to be cohesive as possible, so I'll just take some time here and add the same concrete surface that I did in the first episode. And I'll just do that throughout the city. There we go, a bit higher density in Fugusaki. I think it looks nice. Although we're starting to see some more waste and death care needs, as well as we still don't have a train depot for the actual trains. But while the concrete surfaces are still fresh on my mind, I return to our mountain town and give it the same treatment. And to help the station stand out, I'm going to change the surface here to a bit of a darker gray, brownish brick. And then I will add in a little bit of like privacy walls or property line walls. And I'll put some hedges along the way too, just for a little bit of decoration. But now with some of that detailing out of the way, I can focus on the death care. And I've been looking at this hill for a while now. I think what I'm going to do is make something a little bit custom. Disclaimer, I'm not going to be detailing it today. I just don't really know how to make it look as accurate as possible yet. So I'm going to take a look at some Buddhist temples and some cemeteries around there to get a pretty good feel of how it should look. And then I'll come back in a future episode and detail it up. For now, I just want to make sure we have the death care services we need in the city to make sure there's not just a bunch of bodies just hanging around. This building right here isn't going to be the temple itself. It's likely going to be maybe like the maintenance depot for the hearses, and maybe there's some long-term storage for remains here as well. I'm not really sure, but it's got the garage, so I figured this would be where the hearses go. And because I imagine it wouldn't be fun for these hearses to drive up a grassy hill, I'm going to add the roads in here and get a layout for how the rest of the facility is going to look. I kind of want to have a nice pedestrian road that circles the area here, good for everyone to be able to stroll around and come visit their loved ones. Because of the hilly terrain, I had this idea of making some terraces along the hillside here to kind of break it up and make it look a little bit more, I don't know, geometric, but just something interesting instead of just having to fight the slopes, especially when it comes down to, you know, where bodies are laid to rest. I think they probably have some terraced areas to flatten out to make sure there's no issues with the long-term burials. After building the layout for the cemetery and temple, I started building some more in the mountain town, and I leveled up to level 6. It gives us a little bit more money, increased loan limit, a heavy traffic ban. But with the money, I think it's finally time to add in an actual train depot. And I struggled on figuring out where to put this, but I think along this part of the beach here, looking at the wind direction, we can see all of the wind goes over into the bay. So I think this would be perfect for a small industrial zone. And I think a train depot would make sense in an industrial zone too. But because it's so tight here, I end up using this end terminal depot. It's an asset. I'm not really sure from which pack, but it is in my play set. With the depot built, it's time to get it connected to the rest of our grid so it can get the water, sewage, and electric. I'm just going to have a small alley road here. It's a private road for the depot itself, and then it'll connect to the slightly larger Japanese street that I've been using, and this will just be the arterial for this part of town. After placing the terminal, there comes the problem of kind of what to do with connecting it up. We have a single track on the opposite side of this interstate here, and I think that's probably going to be our best bet instead of running a track on the other side too. So I think what we're going to do is build a bridge over a section of this interstate here and then have it connect underneath. So what I'm doing right now is placing some roads here to get some nodes placed so I can break the road specifically where I want it to go. I'll delete those, and then just moving the terrain, I'll just find a spot in here to make a small flat surface that can cut through underneath the bridge. Depot's gonna be pretty bare bones for right now. It might even be temporary, I'm not really sure, but I don't really have a whole lot of space to throw a gigantic detailed depot down, unfortunately. I would love to have one, but that's not in the cards for right now. In the future, definitely. But here I'll just continue with the single track before switching to a double track here. One to continue and then one to turn into the depot itself. Something I've noticed after looking at Google Earth and watching a few YouTube videos is a lot of these tracks are just single track. So that's what I'm going to try and recreate. Only having the single track for the small rural geosin lines and only upgrading it when necessary, especially in the more urban environments with a lot more connecting lines. But for here, I think it makes sense to have a double track, just given the depot right here, just a little bit more wiggle room for the trains moving around. After I get the line set up, I'm going to use the parallel line tool for the highway roads here and just try to get it as close to the track as possible without any issues. And then I also need to make sure the clearance is high enough but not too steep for the cars. I think that's probably like 5 to 6%. I think that's probably okay. But it clears the rail without anarchy, which is perfect. No issues there. So I can just go ahead and connect it up to the rest of the highway, and then we're golden. With the bridge completed, both cars and trains can move unimpeded throughout here. So that's going to be perfect. We finally have some trains to use for our Fugusaki to Mountain Village line. And this part of town will be detailed up, I think, once we start adding some industry down here. But for now, like I said, I'm revisiting this line because, quite frankly, I don't like the giant viaduct. I think it's too much for this town right here. Maybe in the future, I'll have something bigger. But for now, it just doesn't feel justified, I think, to me, to have a giant train bridge going through here for what's really only a rural line at the moment. So I'm gonna try to delete all of it and figure out a way to get the rail over to Fugusaki without it feeling like they had to pay an arm and a leg to do it for something, in the grand scheme of things, not profitable at all, first of all, and just kind of a small line. Basically, in order for me to get this train track to work, I'm gonna need a tunnel under the mountain here and then wrap around if I want to have it at the correct inclines around, 2 to 4% roughly. The thing is, it probably, in the grand scheme of things, realistically, it's more expensive than the bridge itself, but at least it doesn't look like a giant piece of hulking infrastructure. The only downside is I just don't get to see the trains rolling through the mountains. But I think if I want it to be authentic enough to not be, running up a 20% incline, I gotta do this. I guess the good news is this is not going to be the only train line we have by any stretch of the imagination. So I'll have plenty of opportunities to get the picturesque single engine rolling through rice paddies in the future. And now I switch to a bridge again, except this time I'm being a little bit more aware. I'm not going to cut it straight through downtown. I think that was the biggest issue I had, was it just looked too substantial. Like, I know I said in previous episodes the rail should come first and then the buildings, but that bridge was just too high. It just looked insane to me. So I think this works way better. After getting the train line built, I think it's time to actually get some proper districts going in our city. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break up the city into different districts based pretty much solely on vibes, on how I feel each part of town is. Like, this right here feels to me like Fugusaki City, like proper. And this part right here feels completely different to me. So this is going to be something else entirely. Also, look at how the traffic moving in. Same here. So I'm just going to do this throughout the city. Make sure everything current has a district to it. And then I'll go in and rename some of them. I'll leave some of them blank just because I don't really know what it should be named. But I have a few names for other things. But I'm curious, let me know in the comments how you guys decide where your districts go. Do you do it based on vibes, or do you have like some kind of system that you use to tell you where a district should go and where it shouldn't? I'm curious to know how everybody does that. Back to the names though, gonna be very creative. This right here is going to be Fugusaki Industrial because it's Fugusaki, but it's also industrial. The mountain village here creatively will be named Yamazato, meaning mountain village. And then actual creativity here, Garnet Terrace will be Kazetani, which roughly means wind valley. I would imagine maybe there's some strong winds coming off the ocean, and this valley right here is just like a big wind funnel between the ocean and the mountain, hence the name Wind Valley. I'm not really sure. Let me know what you guys think of the names in the comments. I have another name for this area where the temple and cemetery are. Imagine a battle has taken place here hundreds of years ago, a particularly bloody one. Hence the name of the hill where the temple and the cemetery lie, Inutsuna Oka. Roughly transferring to Somber Hill. Now, I will say I am using Google Translate for this. I apologize, I do not know Japanese, so let me know if that's a correct translation or not. Please and thank you. Continuing with the naming, I will name the train line Fugusaki to Yamazato line. Just keeping it simple. Not very creative, but at least I know where it's going. But with that, all we really have left to do is detail. And by detail, I mean add bushes and trees everywhere when I have the money to do so. And because of how repetitive it is, I'm not going to show you all of it. I'll give you a brief time lapse, and then we can continue on. Here we are back at the Fugusaki train station, and I've laid out just a little bit of a shopping mall underneath the tracks here, and I just skipped ahead to where I put the planters down because it's kind of finicky. I don't really know how to best format the planters, but I think this looks great. I think this would be a very popular spot for people to kind of spend their time waiting for their train, taking a break from work, what have you. It just seems like a pleasant, inviting space. Something I don't do enough is add lights. I usually don't play at nighttime, so I usually just leave these out. But I figured, I'd change that here. I'm detailing up all the roads anyways, so I might as well have it also look good at night. So here I am just going to place down a few of these lights, and then I'm going to do a few decorations here. Some of these roads where I don't want people crossing the lanes, I'll put in these hedges, and then I'll also put in some of the prop fences along those lines as well to give it sort of a median feel, but it's tight and narrow enough to stay in the footprint of the city. And here's how the train station stores look at night as well. I think it looks nice and quiet, but that's going to be it for today. I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch today. I really do appreciate it. If you like what you saw today, please leave a like and hit subscribe. And with that, I hope you all have a good one.